Coach, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to start a bit talk about how we're seeing how COVID-19 has affected the NFL and D1 football. You know, games have been postponed, they've been cancelled, and to be honest, it's a bit of a miracle that the seasons have gotten as far as they have. So, can you tell us how coronavirus has impacted your season and your football program there in Laney?
It's been tough, right? Number one, we had to cancel our fall season and we moved it to the spring. Friday, colleges have to determine whether they're opting in to play in the spring or opting out. We made the announcement on Tuesday that we were opting in, right? Monday, we got the okay to opt in, but with the caveat that as long as the county health officials allow us, which right now they're not. So, but the goal is to, at least start in January, starting to train again, right? And get prepared so that if we can play, we'll be in a position to play physically.
Yeah, 'cause I can imagine that the layoff hasn't been easy for your players because getting ready for a college season would require a huge amount of preparation, strength and conditioning, on-field practice time. So I can kind of imagine that that's all being put in flux at the minute, and it's going to be kind of hard to get back into that rhythm and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were able to start, we shut down in March. And then we did Zooms like every day with the kids because we thought, there might be an opportunity to come back and play. We wanted to be at least mentally prepared, right? And then we gave them workouts every day. Every Monday I would film a challenge, to have them compete with me to do something, right? But then as we saw the cases just continue to grow and, here in the U.S., not really having a national plan to stay safe, right? I could tell things were going to happen. So then we were really trying to concentrate more on just keeping our young men mentally safe, right? Because they were depressed. They were feeling horrible, just so many things going on. The school was tough, family, money issues. And so we spent more of our time on the mental health side. And then fortunately, we were able to come back in the second week of September with what we call conditioning, pods of 10 or under. And we did it 2 days a week, right? And so we had about 50 kids out there, but some only came on Tuesday and some only came on Thursday, and there was a group about 20 that came both days, right? And we just ran and we did, resistance bands, but really it was more just to reconnect, right? Even though you had a social distance, you got to at least there was a presence. And I think that really helped, right? So now we shut down at the beginning of December, and then we'll start again either January 4th or January 11th. To prepare for this opt-in, hopefully spring, abbreviated spring.
Yeah. So your players and your staff, like how are they dealing with the challenges? I mean, it's not just a challenge of not having football. It's a challenge of not being with your team on a daily basis, Like, in what kind of way are your players and your coaches staying focused and prepared for when that season does eventually happen?
I think the biggest thing was I wanted to continue to give them hope and opportunity that there's something would happen, right? But really our biggest emphasis besides their mental health was just stay on it academically. Come on, finish up strong, So one of the goals was for the sophomores, like, hey, you may not play for us. We're going to try to get you a scholarship to get you out now. So let's take care of business academically now so you can leave. And the bright side, the silver lining, was that you'd have 3 years at your new school, right?
Yeah, of course.
So we were trying to find silver linings, right? Like I tell the kids, we always try to take lemons and make lemonade, right? And so it was just a constant, not a battle, but for us trying to change the narrative every day to try to find a positive for what was happening, and it was tough. You have young men that are seeing family members get COVID. They're seeing family members lose jobs or lose housing, right? And so you're trying constantly to try to keep upbeat as possible. For us, a lot of our students are marginalized students, right? They've been told they don't belong in college. They didn't have great early fundamentals in academics, so we were working with that. Now you couple that with trying to learn online. And then you go with the digital divide. They may not even have a computer at home. They may not have, high-speed internet, right? So we were trying to find hotspots, and we were able to get them hotspots, trying to get laptops. So we were driving around dropping that off, right? Sometimes dropping off food. but was just really trying to look at a holistic view of these young men and not as, quote, football players. And we never really do. We always look at the whole person, but it was even more so now than ever that we had to really concentrate on those areas.
Yeah, because this season without football, the divide, or the balance between student and athlete mostly became about the student. And as you say, taking that holistic approach. I mean, these kids coming in, as you say, they're marginalized. They don't have a lot going on outside of football. So I suppose a large part of your job was then shifted from playing football to keeping these kids engaged and alive in some cases, maybe.
Yeah, and I think it's real important for everybody to understand, right? When we say marginalized, the system marginalized them, right?
Of course.
They're the one. The system has told them that they're throwaways, right? That you're going to be a menial labor guy or go to jail or whatever, and not realize what untapped ability, intelligence is in there, right? So we just take that same. Well, we try to explain to them, look, you got a work ethic or you wouldn't be here. So let's take that same work ethic and turn it in the classroom, right? And help them understand the importance of the education, and more importantly, that they can succeed in this society. And with an education, the success is even more relevant. And so it's a constant reminder of that, but it's hard to do that. Even if I Zoom with you or talk to you on the phone, it's not the same as me talking to you face to face, right?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I felt that was missing. That's what hurt me the most, right? The face to face contact, right? When you're working with these young men, right? It's the touch, it's the feel, the big hug, right? Or the punch on the arm, or even it's just me, cussing them out sometimes, and then we joke afterwards about it, right? It's that banter that occurs, right? That lets them know that, okay, it's okay to be, have issues, and explain it to them. Let's talk about it. Let's hug about it. Let's figure it all out. So that was missing, right?
Yeah, of course.
And it's the detachment of it, being on a Zoom.
Yeah. So explain to me, obviously, by the time Laney College were featured on Last Chance U, it was already a huge phenomenon. It was one of the most popular shows on Netflix. Everyone heard about it. Can you describe to me the experience of having your program featured on the show, and what it was like having Laney brought to not just a national audience in America, but in fact an international audience all around the world?
Unbelievable, right? So, I had watched Last Chance U, and, I liked it, and I thought, wow, I could, man, I don't think we're that, we can be, I think we're better. We do some things differently. We don't have dorms. We don't have this. That's why I kind of said, we're not Last Chance, we're best chance, we're first chance, right? I wanted to kind of flip that narrative a little bit. But I remember at different times, during the filming of the show, during the season, ups and downs, when the banter and things that you have with your players was kind of like, man, you're going to be on national TV and you're going to look like this. And one of the cameramen or one of the producers said, Coach, this is worldwide. I'm like, okay, sure, it's worldwide. And you don't realize it's really worldwide. When the show came out and it was received so well, people telling it was the best season ever or whatever, and I'm not into judging that, but, think about it. This school in Oakland was featured a full page article on the Sunday's New York Times. I've been communicating or reached out to by people from all over the world. Ireland, Dublin, Ireland, my God, England, France, India, Pakistan, all, Latin America, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand. It was just Canada. It was just phenomenal. Besides just all the states in our country, right? And then you find out that like 16 million people, 18 million people have watched you and your players and your coaches and your family do what you do every day, and kind of validate who you are in essence, right? Not that I needed validation necessarily, but validate that you can do things a certain way, and people would resonate with folks, right? It's okay to be, quote, hard, but it's okay to hug them up and kiss them when they're hurting, or to have a strong family that you share your family with your players, right? Because you tell your players, hey, we are family. And so they actually see that. And so that was good, and even just for me getting communicate, people reaching out to me that I had been in my life 40 years ago when I first started coaching, or even people that I, grew up with have reached out to me. A neighbor that grew up when I was, in elementary school reached out all of a sudden, like, oh my God, and you forget about their friends that I had in sixth grade that we grew apart because they moved, and yet now they saw this show and they reconnected. Hey, you remember me? And of course, yeah, I do. And so that was kind of, that is so rich. It's such, it makes you feel good. And then when I talked to the players that were featured, like the comments and things that, Dior receives every day, about staying strong. And, I hear you, I go through the same struggles, or RJ or Ray, Ray, God, you're so flamboyant, or News, family, and everybody, oh, we love your family. And like, to some people out there, it's unique, right? To see a young man and his wife and 2 kids struggle to go through college. We see it every day, right? But for a lot of people, that's their life, and they can connect to that. Wow, I'm doing that same struggle. It's not just me, and they may not be playing football, but they're trying to get an education to better themselves, right? And so I think it's to see yourself in essence out there gives you strength to continue what you're doing. So I kind of really appreciate that Netflix and Last Chance U folks showed our story, right? Because our story was unique.
So you mentioned there that you were familiar with the show before your school was featured on it, and looking at the coaching philosophies that some of the coaches previously had. You had Buddy in Mississippi. Obviously, he was known for a particularly kind of, yourself, scream and roar and shout to get the best kind of performance from his athletes. And again, similarly, JB in Kansas, in Independence, Kansas, had that approach. Did you feel like your approach would have to be different, or were you being true to yourself with your approach to your players?
So remember, and I don't know those two. I've seen them around at conventions. And I don't know them, and I don't judge anybody. Everybody does what they do, right? But I've been doing this 40 years. Yeah. Right. I don't think either of them done it 40 years. Right. So what I'm saying is that the people that I've known for 40 years come back and go, that's you. You didn't play to the cameras. Right. I'm true to who I am. I don't need to be somebody else. Right. And when the producers talked to me about being on the show, I said, I'm not that guy. Are you okay with that? They go, no, we're fine. This is what we want. Right. All right. I'm not going to go have a fight with a referee. You know what I mean? I'm not going to have
play. I'm not going to,
huh?
You weren't going to play for the cameras.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to sit in a hot tub and smoke a cigar and drink some whiskey. I'm going to be with my family. I'm going to have a walk with my wife, and we're going to talk about what we talk about. Right. So, if you're okay with that, people may think it's boring. I don't know. Now I get fired up. Don't get me wrong. Ask my players, they've seen it, but it's different. It's just a different way of who we are. I mean, again, I'm not trying to get another coaching job. I'm fine where I'm at. I don't need this, right? I've won, I didn't lose a game in the 90s in high school. I've been a coach of the year in high school. I think the only one in California has been the high school coach of the year and the junior college coach of the year. Mm-hmm. I'm already inducted into a Hall of Fame right here in the Bay Area, right? I've worked for the National Football League. I've worked for the Raiders. And so, but what I have done is I worked for this community, right? I want to be a part of it. And that's what I showed, right? I think the city of Oakland was one of the stars of this show.
Definitely.
And I think that people may think like Dublin has a certain thing about Dublin. Well, now they got to see a different side of Dublin. Well, Oakland has the same thing. They got to see a different side of Oakland. So I felt good about that too.
You mentioned there how, some of the coaches previously may have been playing up for the camera.
No, I didn't say they were playing up. You said that. Okay. I don't know them to know who they are.
I said that, but kind of on that topic, in the season before yours, you saw some of the players potentially playing up for the camera a little bit as well. So, and obviously completely understandable. They're getting the national attention, that's going to potentially get them to the next level. So do you think that might have been happening on your season? Did you watch it back after on Netflix or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, part of the things I think Ray talks regardless, but I think Ray was talking way more than he would if the camera wasn't there. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think Dior was Dior, right? I mean, I think a lot of that was there. I think RJ bitching on the sidelines a little bit more. Maybe maybe he was playing to the camera because he wanted to look good on camera as well, right? Because we talked to, I talk to all these guys all the time still now, right?
Mm.
And New was just New. New is that's who he is, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I think it was a distraction in some ways to the kids and us. And then after a while, they're there. They become part of your family. So you don't really realize who they – in fact, it's kind of when they don't show up at the end of the season, you're kind of missing them, right? Like just not because the camera's not there, because they're not there. Themselves, their personalities are who they are. They become embedded with you, right? Yeah. Just like they see our stories. They start to tell us their stories. Two of them were actually from Oakland.
Okay.
And, one grew up right around the corner from Laney. The other one, grew up with some of the same people as my assistant coaches did. They knew, they're the same age. So, you get to hear their stories, and it was interesting.
Would you still stay in touch with your players from over the years, and the ones that were on the show? So you mentioned the likes of New, Dior. Would you keep in communication with them and check in and see how they're getting on?
I still do. I got guys that, probably not 40 for my first 2 years in San Diego because I don't, unfortunately, they reached out to me, but for my early days in Skyline, absolutely. I've always talked to them, right? I think about Dwayne Gardner, he was on my undefeated team when I was an assistant coach, right? In 84. And so he went to USC. Him and I still talk to this day, Brian McGee, who didn't play on my team but was, the rival opponent star, him and I still have a relationship because they stay in Oakland. So here's the deal. Part of it is Oakland is a big city who's a small town.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody. So your paths still cross. It doesn't change. I've had a player that I was a Division I player for, went to Cal. I coached his son, was a Division I player, went to Cal. Right? You still get generationals, right? There are instructors that teach at Laney that I know their aunt, their grandmother, grandfather. And so you go, I've known them. I mean, it just doesn't change.
So for you, it kind of seems like being a coach is more than coaching kids at football. It's about being actively involved in the community and their lives and keeping that connection going throughout the years.
100%. I think teachers – right, as an educator, and coaches are educators, right? Let's not forget that, right? Our classroom just is the biggest classroom on any campus, right? And so you're still teaching, right? And you're teaching a skill set, right? That's not just arithmetic or reading or running around playing football. It's a life curriculum as well. And you get to reap how well you did by being a fabric of the community, right? So it behooves you to do a great job to make the next, quote, citizens of that community, right? And so if you are a fabric, right, that education continues, right, even after they leave your classroom. But the education continues for you too, right? So education is a two-way street. I always feel like I'm learning every day from my players, my students, as well as they're learning from me.
Yeah.
And as I go into the community, right, I get to see how well the lesson was taught, and we can make adjustments how we can do a better job because it can still happen. And that's where I think learning is lifelong. And that lifelong is for both of us as we move forward in life together, right?
So you mentioned, as you say, you have over 40 years experience in coaching football, and you coached in high school at Skyline. So what was it like coming from the high school environment into the college environment? Was there a big gap in the level?
Yeah, there is, but it's not in football, right? The gap is just the time. So, at Skyline, school started at 8:20. I got there by 7 o'clock every day. We lifted in the morning. I had the kids, and then I taught 4 periods a day of 10th graders, getting them ready. Then I got ready for football. At Laney, you come in and pretty much you just coach football. I taught a badminton class or something that's a little bit different. You're dealing with adults, so there's a different conversation that occurs with adults than you do with kids. I have a badminton class, and I have these couple that have been with me for 10 years playing badminton every semester, right? They're retired dentists. So we talk about retirement and kids and grandkids and investments, So there's an education, two-way education, but it's a different setting. So I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing is the rivalry, right? So the high school rivalry is huge, right? So you want to be the winning team in the city, right? Because, you get bragging rights for the whole city. You don't quite get that at Laney, because you play different teams every year. You don't have the same necessary teams other than like City College, which showed in the show was a big rivalry. But outside of that, there's not. And then in high school, you have those players, you see them develop. So at Skyline, when I was there, for the most part, it was 10th grade to 12th. And so you get them and you get them through. But then at the last few years, they added 9th grader. But you get these kids for a lot longer. At Laney, you get them for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then it's gone, right? So, and think about it. When you get a 14-year-old, you're really helping shape who this person is compared to when you get an 18-year-old. You're still shaping them, but you're not as big of an influence. Maybe you are in certain ways, but not in a total way, right? And so I kind of miss some of that, but I don't miss some of it as well, right? I mean, you get these poor kids, 14, 15, they're just squirrels, running around. They're just trying to figure out who they are, right? And then you morph it to now when they're 18, 19, they still are squirrels, but a little bit different, and they are adults, right? So you don't have parental intervention or interference like you would in high school.
So at Laney, you have the dual role of head football coach and athletic director. How do you balance that throughout the season? Is there sometimes when you're more coach than athletic director and vice versa? How would you balance that dual role?
It's tough, right? There's days it's more tough than others. And one, you got to have good assistants with you, both on the football side and on the athletic director side, right? So that you can have folks, help you get through. You got to be able to delegate. But ultimately, at some point, you got to handle it. So, like, my assistants don't show up until almost 12 o'clock every day for football. They do a lot of stuff at home. I get there before 10 every day, which is better than getting there before 7, right? To knock stuff out, right? And then on Fridays, when everybody is off for the most part, I'm on, because that's a day to make up for things I didn't do athletic director-wise that need to happen for that week. Supportive wife, right, to help me, with things that at home sometimes that I'm struggling with, figuring out how to write the right email or word it correctly so it's not, the coach coming out as coach speak, but more as an administrator speak, right? Things of that nature. And it takes some time, and then but I've been doing it for a while. I did it at Skyline too. I was the athletic director and the head football coach. So it's not new, right? Yeah. But, it's navigating the politics of being an athletic director and looking out for all the sports besides football. And, having to deal with not only the president, but the chancellor, right? And then being your own PR person, right? Why is athletics important? What does it do for the community? What does it do for the student body, right? So being the person to let folks know how important it is that we take care of those things.
So out of your decades of coaching football, what stands out to you as your favorite moment or your number one moment from all your coaching years?
There are so many, one of them is just big was when Marvell, who I'm very close with, won the Super Bowl with the Steelers. And, he was like the first guy coach that was, in the Super Bowl and a starter, big part of it. Well, he brought us out, said, Coach, I want you to come out to the game. And so myself and my 2 daughters came. And when he won, the 3 of us were on the field hugging him as the confetti was coming down, right? So that's an moment, right? That old MasterCard, commercial like priceless. You can't put a tag on it, right? But really it's more the relationship I have with Marvell, right? That he wanted me there, right? That, to be there. But one of the things that sticks out, and I tell everybody this, was when we won the state championship in 2018.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to the last play. The guy kind of scrambles. We tackle him. The scoreboard was a video scoreboard, so they kept moving the clock at different places on the board. So sometimes down the bottom, sometimes top. I'm like looking at, okay, do they have another play? Oh, it's done. I just see everybody running. So I just start running on the field. I jump on Derek, who's been played for me. And then, I ran to go shake the hands of the, Moose, the coach, the opposing coach. And then I realized, you know what? I run up to the stands. I want to share it with my family.
Yeah.
My wife was there. My daughters were there. I wanted to hug. My sister was there. Made me think of my father, who was a big part of my life. And I did all that. But as I did all that, I looked down on the field and you see all our kids, rush the field and then turn around and run to the goal line where the scoreboard was. And I didn't really think about why that happened, but, it just was in my mind. And then when I watched the film, I realized why. So as we were going through the season, one of our freshman D linemen, D end, was a really good player, Ramon Sanders. And in the first round of the playoffs, had like 2 sacks, tackle for loss, and I think a caused fumble. So preparing for the Northern California Championship on a walkthrough in the early week of practice, him and a linebacker ran each other. He went down in pain, and he had basically fractured his femur. And we go, well, how do you fracture a femur, an 18-year-old, just a stud, right?
Yeah.
Something else is going on. Well, it turned out he had cancer.
Wow.
And so they found he had cancer. So at that game, he was at that game, and he was there in his wheelchair in the end zone. So when they all ran on the field to celebrate, the whole team turned and ran to go celebrate with him.
That is pretty cool.
To hug him. And so all that made me think that these guys are, and they get all these labels, but yet they cared about their brother and made sure to share it with him. That was a moving moment for me. Yeah. And then fast forward to Last Chance Shoe. They didn't show it on the show, but our last game, less than a year away from when he was diagnosed with cancer, he passed away. And so, that was a heartfelt bowl game we had. But the point was that the guys on that team in 18 embraced that, right? When you say we're brothers, they really meant it. And so I think, that was one of the bigger moments over 40 years.
It sounds like a really special moment, and it just goes to show, like what you've been talking about, that football is more than football. It's family, it's community, it's about molding the young men. So that's fantastic. You mentioned the 2018 state championship, the California state championship there, and the mythical national championship, which was I had to Google it after hearing that phrase. I was like, why can't they just be the national champions? So is that to do with the fact that the community college football in California exists outside of the system? The greatest.
Yeah. So if you think about it, so the California Community College 3C 2A.
Okay.
There are more teams that play football in the state of California than the rest of the country combined.
Oh.
But the rest of the country combined are the NJCA.
Yeah. So
that's where East Mississippi and Kansas play in. So obviously they have the Kansas League and then the Mississippi or whoever, and they play and they declare their national champ, right? The NJCA national champ. Well, historically, if you won California, you were considered the national champs because there's the most teams.
Yeah.
Then because later in life, there's these polls and stuff and someone kind of dictates it. But whoever the guy that dictates it, I'm like, okay, who are you? Did you see everybody play?
Yeah.
And then I remember having a conversation with him after we won. And he goes, well, I'm going to give it to East Mississippi, because I don't know if they had 1 loss or 0 losses. You had 2 losses. Interesting. I said, but didn't you write an article before that we both played saying that if East Mississippi wins big, that they were going to be the national champs. But if they lose or don't win big and Ventura wins, that Ventura would be the national champs. He says, yeah, I said that. Okay, so we beat Ventura, right? So we should be the national champs. Well, you had 2 losses. They had 1. I said, no, they had 2 losses, but they didn't count the other one because the other team had to forfeit the game. But they actually lost twice on the field. Well, yeah, okay, but you're from Southern California. I understand. I'm from North. Because remember, Laney wasn't supposed to win. Laney's a small school.
Yeah.
We're not a powerhouse school like all the other ones, right? Even though we've been really successful, we weren't. We're small. We're in Oakland. We're not this big mega school. That's number one. But then what happened around January, late January, there's a guy in Tennessee, and I can't think of his name right now, but he puts out this poll. He does a mathematical analysis of every team from Clemson on down, right?
Yeah.
And so he ranks every team based on this computer module, and it's been very, very accurate. Everybody said, it's really a betting poll pretty much, right? Well, guess who was number 1 ranked 2-year school in the country? He ranked Laney. In fact, East Mississippi was like behind like 3 other California teams. So when that came out, there was no doubt that who the number 1 team in the number 1 ranked,
Yeah.
By a mathematical, it was empirical data, not someone's whim or, who paid your salary, right? Yeah. So that's how we were able to say that we're the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, the poll system, the old poll system, I find it is quite arbitrary. And that's why I was glad when when college football playoff came in, because instead of the old BCS, the media ranking, you had some sort of a more fairer kind of form of, the playoffs.
Right. And I don't, we still don't know who would have won. If we played each other, I would say we would win and they would say they would win. And the thing is this, right? When you look at East Mississippi or you look at Independence, one of the difference between them and what we have in California is they do get better, quote, players that go to, quote, big schools, right? Okay, but are they better? Because they were kicked out of another school. They go to this school. Some of them do well. Some get kicked out again, right? So, it's like they always rank these recruiting class, right? Well, they're arbitrary, right? Now, the other thing is that because we're in California, then we don't have these great talent supposedly, right? But what we do is we have to coach better.
Yeah.
There's coaches that work their tail off to, like Mushigan, who I beat that played at Ventura. He coached in the NFL. He's been a head coach at Division I level, coach at Division I level. So, they're good coaching. And so I think we do a great job of coaching. Whereas I think in some of the other schools, I'm not saying they don't do a great job, but they do a better job. Maybe they have to manage, right, to help change behavior in some ways. But I just think there's some difference involved in what we do and how we
in your culture,
what we do.
Yeah.
Yes, in California, right? Yeah. There's certain things we don't give scholarships, so you have to take the players that you have and you have to develop them. That's why we use Laney built, right? I mean, we take the guy no one wanted, right? They didn't even know who they existed. When you look at Ray, everybody knows Ray, right? He's big time. But his brother Shawnee, he'll be drafted this year. He went to 2 other JCs. They didn't think he was good enough. He came to our place, and now he's, was all everything, goes to Division I's, 4 picks. You know what I mean? We had to develop that kid. We moved him from offense to defense. We made something out of him. We have a kid that was up at Oregon State, another kid that was a running back. Well, he got big, and we turned him into a D lineman, most dominant D lineman. The quarterback in the 2018 season, Brookshire, was a really good high school quarterback with no offers, then went to the local JC, couldn't even start. They benched him. And he comes to our place and leads us to a state championship. So Laney built. We develop players. We have to. We have to do a better job of coaching because we're not starting out with the, quote, cream of the crop. I think we got great players that just don't understand how good they can be, and we have to bring it out of them. And that's my saying, right? We're always going to believe in you so you can believe in yourself, right? And then we go to Laney built, baby, because that's what we're going to do.
It's definitely a more holistic philosophy to have regarding players, yeah. So with your season, your delayed season, hopefully going ahead in the spring, what are your aspirations? And I know you're going to say yes to this regardless, but do you see yourself winning the state championship in 2021?
I see us being always, you always want to win, but what I want to do is be the better team. I want to make our team better, right? Wins and losses will take care of themselves how you work with each other. Like I tell the kids, the only team that can beat Laney is Laney. So we have, we're going to, the losses we have is because of us. So we're going to try to develop that. But I don't think there's going to be, there's not going to be a spring 2021 state champ because they're not allowing us to play a state championship, right? We're going to only play regional only.
Okay.
But the following fall, which will still be 2021, right? I hope that our goal is to develop this spring, whatever we do, for that run, right? Yeah. That's why this, to get them prepared for that run.
Yeah.
This run is, we're hoping that you get, like you've seen in NCAA, all the cancellations, that we'll get a few games going, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe just padded spring ball with 15 days of pads, just to help their development.
Yeah. I mean, I guess even if there is no state championship per se, some football is better than no football because at least your guys will get a run out. They can put everything that they'll finally get some game time, and then you can focus on the next season, so to speak.
Yes. Well, they just need to develop, right? They need to get back to some normalcy, right? They need to come in. They got to get to a routine every day. got to lift weights. They got to, see instructors and, start to build themselves back as students, right? And then we got to build them as football players, right? We got to build that skill set for them so that they can be, reach their potential, right? Potential is a shitty word, right? Because really what it means, you ain't did shit yet, right? That's why I tell everybody, you don't want anybody to tell you got potential. Why not, coach? Because that means you ain't shit, right? So you don't want to do that. So we want to work on not being potential, but actually this is what we can do.
So, Coach, my final question is for you. Do you believe in New Year's resolutions? And if so, do you have any for 2021?
I kind of do them sometimes, but, usually it's around just, my family, staying healthy and everything. And my resolution this year would be is that we as a society, right, worldwide, can be safe and have hope and opportunity, right, from the coronavirus, but everything, right, with us, with the new change in leadership at the presidency, hopefully we can build some civility again, right, where we can embrace everybody as equals, and that we can, love one another for our similarities and understand that we all have some differences. And that's what makes us unique sometimes, right?
Great. Coach, well, listen, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, but before you stop recording, before we start, we got to do this now. You ready?
Okay, go
All
on.
right. 2 claps. Ready? Oh, you're too fast. 2 claps. Ready?
I got it that time.
There
Coach, listen, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.